A group of 5 friends, all close since childhood, decided to escape the chaos of their city lives for a weekend camping trip. Their destination, the infamous Whitewood Forest, located in a remote part of the country. The forest had a dark reputation. It was said that those who ventured too deep into its heart were never seen again. But like most rumors, they dismissed it as nothing more than a legend to scare tourists. It was a Friday afternoon when they arrived. Jake, Emma, Luke, Sarah, and Nick. They set up their tents by a small stream, the trees towering over them like silent watchers. As the evening sun dipped behind the horizon, the forest grew eerily quiet. The usual sounds of wildlife faded, leaving an unsettling stillness in the air. "We should gather some firewood before it gets too dark," Jake suggested. "Yeah, let's not waste time," Emma added, looking around with a sense of unease she couldn't quite shake. The group split up into pairs, Jake and Emma, Luke and Sarah leaving Nick behind to watch the camp. They were supposed to stay close, but as the minutes passed, the dense trees and underbrush swallowed them. The deeper they ventured, the stranger the forest seemed to become. As Jake and Emma walked further, they noticed something odd. The trees around them were twisted, their bark dark and gnarled, as though they had been burned. A strange scent hung in the air, metallic and heavy, like iron, and then they began to hear whispers. "Did you hear that?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Jake nodded, his eyes darting around. The whispers grew louder, though neither of them could make out what was being said. It was as if the forest itself was speaking to them, beckoning them deeper. Suddenly, a scream pierced the silence. That was Sarah. Emma gasped, her face pale with fear. They sprinted through the trees, following the direction of the scream. After what felt like an eternity, they found Luke and Sarah standing in front of a large, old tree. But something was wrong. Both of them stood motionless, staring blankly ahead, their eyes glazed over as if they were in a trance. "Luke!" "Sarah!" Jake shouted, grabbing Luke by the shoulder. But he didn't respond. Sarah, too, was unresponsive, her lips moving as if she were silently speaking to herself. "What the hell is going on?" Emma whispered, taking a step back. And then, the ground beneath them trembled. The roots of the tree started to move, twisting and writhing like serpents. They reached out, hurling around Luke and Sarah's feet, dragging them closer to the tree. "We need to get out of here," Jake yelled, pulling Emma away from the growing chaos. But before they could run, a voice deep and ancient echoed through the forest. "They are mine now." Jake froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. He turned toward the tree, and in the dim light, he could see faces, dozens of them etched into the bark. They were twisted in expressions of agony, their eyes hollow and empty. "These are the lost," the voice continued. "Those who enter my forest never leave." Emma was paralyzed with fear, her legs refusing to move. She could feel the ground shifting beneath her, the roots slowly inching toward her feet. But Jake, in a moment of desperate courage, grabbed her hand and pulled her away. "We have to find Nick," he said, his voice shaking. They ran through the forest, the whispers growing louder with each step. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches reaching out like claws. It was as if the forest itself was alive, trying to trap them within its twisted embrace. Finally, after what felt like hours, they stumbled back into the camp, but Nick was gone. The tents were torn apart, the firewood scattered, and there was no sign of their friend. "Nick!" Jake shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. But there was no answer, just the ever-present whispering. "We need to leave, Jake," Emma said, her voice barely a whisper. "We can't stay here." As they frantically packed their things, Jake's mind raced. Where had Nick gone? Was he taken by the same force that had claimed Luke and Sarah? The fear was suffocating, but they couldn't afford to waste time. Just as they were about to leave, Jake saw something out of the corner of his eye. A figure, Nick, standing at the edge of the clearing. "Nick!" he called out, relief flooding his chest. But Nick didn't move. He just stood there, staring at them, his face hidden in the shadows. "Nick, we're leaving," Emma yelled. Still, no response. Jake, frustrated and worried, walked toward him. But as he got closer, he realized something was terribly wrong. Nick's eyes were blank, just like Luke and Sarah's had been. And then, Jake saw the tree roots slowly wrapping around Nick's ankles, pulling him back into the forest. "Help me," Nick whispered, his voice weak and distant. Jake lunged forward to grab him, but it was too late. The roots yanked Nick into the trees, his body disappearing into the darkness. "No!" Emma screamed. The forest around them roared to life, the trees groaning and creaking as if in laughter. The faces in the bark stared down at them, their hollow eyes filled with malice. "There is no escape," the voice whispered again. Jake and Emma, now terrified beyond belief, bolted from the camp. The forest seemed endless, every tree looking the same, every path leading nowhere. They ran and ran, their legs burning with exhaustion, but the whispers followed them, growing louder with each step. Just when they thought they were lost forever, they broke through the tree line and stumbled onto the road where they had first entered the forest. The air was cold, the night eerily quiet. They were free, or so they thought. As they looked back at the forest, Jake noticed something strange. The trees were still, but in the shadows, he could see them: Luke, Sarah, and Nick standing at the edge of the forest, watching. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, as if they had become part of the forest itself. And then, as if in one final act of cruelty, the voice whispered one last time, "You'll come back." Jake and Emma could do nothing but run, the weight of the curse following them long after they had escaped the whispering trees.